Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. You are in the right place if you're ready to talk about grammar and punctuation and spelling and books and all that good stuff. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Dawn Smith, and I am president of Brave Writer. Before I was president of Brave Writer, I was a classroom teacher in our classroom online class space. I became the director of publishing and was involved in writing and bringing to fruition darts, arrows, boomerangs, and selecting these books behind me that are all a part of our literature and grammar programs. And I also am a veteran homeschooler. I homeschooled my kids from the very beginning. They are now 20. My son just turned 20 at the end of May and 22 and just thriving and doing really, really well. My son is going into his third year of university coming up. My daughter works at our library, and we just had a really, really great homeschool experience. So I love working with homeschool families and bringing Brave Writer perspective to all of you to your homeschools. Today, we are going to talk about making grammar, punctuation, and spelling stick with books. Our literature and grammar programs use books all the way from the Quill, which is our program for pre-literacy for 5 to 7-year-olds, to the Slingshot, which is our program for 15 to 18-year-olds in the college prep track for high school. So we definitely put a huge emphasis on books and using those books as a tool for teaching. And the reason we do that is because when kids form a relationship with books and characters, it helps you to teach. There's an emotional connection there in the learning process. There's learning in context, and there's just this opportunity to see how many different writers, professional writers, approach writing. And that is very much the foundation of our approach as well. Okay, so I have a question for you as we get started. Tell me in the chat about a book that you've read that you instantly, like as you were reading it or when you finished it, you wanted to send it to a friend, or you were encouraging a friend to read it, or you really wanted just someone to talk about it with. Out of my heart. All right. So yeah, if you have the names, Walking Taylor Home, Remarkably Bright Creatures. Oh my goodness, yes. Lately, Theo of Golden. I have that in my cart. So many books. Right. Autobiography of My Mother. Oh wow, amazing. The Correspondent, Project Hail Mary. We did a whole family listen to the audiobook for Project Hail Mary because my oldest just could not contain the excitement of wanting to talk to mainly her dad. My son and I had read it when he was in high school, so that's really cool. Yeah. Scythe. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so much to talk about with Scythe. For sure. So many books. And what was it about that book that made you want to share it? I mean, were you reading the book and you just thought, man, there's just like this writer, they have this masterful use of commas and I really want to share that. Or some other thing, like they have this amazing way with adjectives. Or was there something else? Was there something deeper? Was there some other connection that you had with the story or the characters or something that you yeah, masterful use of commas is not usually what we what we look to when we want to share a book with somebody. It was funny, a new take on an old idea. Oh, that's great. The story, the writing, yes, the ending. Okay, that's Theo of Golden. Connection to the story, existential and well written, sentence structure, connections, thought provoking, storytelling of human compassion, compelling characters, description of nature and where the crawdad sings. Ah, that's amazing. See, so there's all of these different things that bring us to writing and that make us want to share writing. Somebody did mention sentence structure. There's story constructions. I'm working my way through Homegoing, and I told my son, I said, you need to read this book because the way this story is constructed over all of these generations of families is just phenomenal. So the writing was amazing, but then also the actual story construction was just unlike anything I had ever read. So I'm hoping he'll read it this summer. Vocabulary, character, emotions. Book about a child fighting cancer was written by his dad, Curtin, a town about 30 minutes from me. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so compelling when there's something close by, some sort of connection there, for sure. Yeah, the suspense. It's a book obsession when you need to share it with everyone you encounter, even strangers or coworkers on Zoom. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Honestly, um, this is why we form book clubs. This is why we have, Bookstagram and Book Talk. And we want to be in community with stories. When something strikes us and it is compelling, it's hard to just, I mean, we sit with it and then we want to share because we are communal people. We are storytellers. We're drawn to stories. Our lineage of language has been oral for so long. And then, of course, once it started to be written down, we started to be able to enter into this great conversation where we are sharing across time and across space, and we can all have a shared experience while still maintaining our own, kind of like personal map of all the things that made us who we are and what we bring to the story. So, somebody said that a story was set nearby them. That's going to have a different impact, even though it's the same story, it's going to have a little bit of a different impact than somebody who is not as familiar with the area or doesn't understand maybe some of the local ways of being and customs and locations. So all of this stuff helps to bring us together and to create these conversations around literature. And, if you don't know already, at Brave Writer, we are kind of bookish. We all kind of love our books and we love to share books and we love to share what we're reading. And I was talking with Laura, who some of you know from Brave Learner Home. She is a coach in our online classroom. She supports people in Brave Learner Home beautifully. And she and I were talking, and she started talking about the unselected journals of Emma M. Lyon. And anybody deep in that series, I have already listened to all 8 books. And what was really fascinating to me is that throughout that book series, there are so many references to other pieces of literature. There are just phenomenal references to this really wide-ranging array of literature. And it started to pull on my attention that I wanted to revisit a couple of them. One of them was Emerson's, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Walt Whitman. And I thought, why is it that I'm drawn to those? Like, what is it that makes me want to, out of all of the stuff, I mean, Shakespeare's referenced and so many other things. And I was thinking, what is it about these books, these references that make me drawn out of all of the things to Emerson and Whitman? And it was because the character who suggested she read those is intriguing to me. These characters are living in, 1883, 84 London, and this particular character spent time in America, so he's associated with and familiar with these American writers, and so she's getting these influences and she's learning these new perspective and new ways of seeing things through this reading. And it was just intriguing to me that I didn't go directly back to Shakespeare. I didn't go to Plutarch. I went to these American writers because they just give really interesting insights into characters. And that just got me thinking about this idea of the great conversation and how these characters are exchanging quotes and essays and, whole books. And that draws them together in this shared experience of community reading and then interacting in these conversations about literature and how their perspective changes, how their ideas about something change, how it presses on them to see things maybe slightly differently. So when we read with our kids, we are pulling them into that type of conversation. We talk about the choices that writers have made. We talk about the language, the maybe it's a certain time period. Like if you're reading Austen with your teen, that's a whole different kind of cadence and language that they're being exposed to. And so when we can have these kinds of conversations and we pull this literature into our home, we aren't just like doing lessons with them. We aren't just imposing grammar on them. We are instilling a curiosity about language and how it works and kind of like what makes it tick and what it does for kids is it provides them with these aha moments that writing and learning to write and reading good literature is a process that is interesting. There are choices to be made. There are ways that you can communicate, like punctuation. I was joking about how, this masterful use of commas, but commas are amazing when you start to play with them and you start to get really interested in how they work. One of the practices that we do in Brave Writer is we will take all of the commas out of a passage and have you read it. So it is this breathless reading experience. Then you put commas after every word and you read that, and it becomes this methodical kind of plodding experience. And so then it becomes this very felt lesson in how commas work and what they do. They're not just there because the rules say they should be there. They're actually a tool. And when kids can feel and experience what that tool is doing, in the context of a story that they care about, in a character that they are interested in, then it becomes something that becomes more than just a worksheet that they're filling out because they need the knowledge about how to use commas. They see the power in the literature, they see the power in the writing. So I want you to think about it as like this literary life that you're creating with your children that is beyond the kitchen table and sitting down to do lessons. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a closer look at a passage. I have a passage I want to share with you. Let me know in the chat if you've read The Wild Robot. Anyone? Or even just seen the movie. We're great with seeing movies. So even if you haven't read the book, but your kids wanted to see the movie. Um, yes, yes, yes. Okay, loved it. Saw the movie. Great. I haven't seen the movie yet. I really need to see it. Wonderful. Yes, yes. 10-year-old loves it. Read it. Nice. Okay, so we are going to take and look at a passage from this book. I'm going to screen share so that you can actually, let me read it first and then I'll screen share. As I read, I want you just to pay attention. We have a concept called stuff to ask any passage. And so these are questions that you can encounter with any passage you're reading with your kids, and ask them. They are the following. What do you notice about this passage? So it can be anything. It can be word choice. It can be, a literary device, anything. And then you can actually point out like a punctuation mark, like what is this doing here? What is the function of this? What happens if we take this punctuation mark out? So I talked about, taking all the commas out and reading breathlessly. What is the mood this passage conveys? So as I read this passage from The Wild Robot, think about the mood and and what it's conveying. Like, is it scary? Is it cozy? Is it nostalgic? Is it, something else? Do you recognize any literary devices in the passage that we've discussed before? Can you identify any interesting parts of speech, like if you've already gone over verbs or nouns with your kids, if they can point any of that out? And then what else do you see? So I am going to read this passage and listen and pay attention to the things that bubble up for you, like that you notice. It says, a small squirrel was scurrying through the garden. Brightbill had never seen her before. He peered out from the nest and watched her bounce across the lawn. After a minute of spying, the gosling shook his tail feathers and waddled outside. Hello, My name is Bright Bill. The squirrel froze. Then she slowly turned around, and then she started to talk. Hi, Bright Bill. My name is Chit Chat, and I'm a 12 and a half week old squirrel, and I'm new around here, and your home is really big and round, and I don't understand why smoke sometimes comes out of it. Reader, I am not quite sure how Chit Chat got enough air into her lungs to go on like that. And I am not quite sure how Bright Bill had the patience to listen. But he stood there and politely nodded as Chit Chat rambled on and on and on. All right. So let me share the actual passage with you, and you could let me know what were some of the things that stood out to you. Let's see. I gotta go down here. Kids' favorite parts. We're going to read aloud Chit Chat the dialogue. Right. Oh my goodness, Chit Chat. Kids enjoyed the challenge of reading Chit Chat's dialogue quickly and breathlessly, if possible, himself. Yes, word choice, alliteration at the beginning, run-on sentence shows speed and ideas running together. Yes, alliteration grabbed my attention. Vivid verbs and great dialogue, alliteration, vivid verbs. Right. So it's so interesting. When you actually look at the passage on the screen now, you can see that the third paragraph there is Chit Chat's dialogue, and there is not one comma. So she truly is a very vivacious kind of character. The other part that I found really interesting is that the three sentences before her dialogue. So this action beat that's sharing about what she is doing. So she froze, then she slowly turned around, and then she started to talk. It really broke things up. It was like almost slow motion, those three sentences, and then it was like off and running. And the way the author did that is really fascinating because he used sentence length and variation. He used a lot of punctuation, a period at the end of each of these short sentences. He began a sentence with and, which we've been told over and over is not, you're not to do, but is definitely not a rule. And then that dialogue passage just took off, and then it ended with an ellipses, which means she truly did keep rambling on and on and on. Mm, let's see. I'm going to get in trouble for this, but vivid is so uh, ubiquitous as an adjective to describe verbs that it's losing its impact. You know what, Ralph? There's something to be said for that. Right. So what is a vivid verb? And that's a great conversation to have with your kids. Like we keep hearing this idea that there are vivid verbs. So what classifies, in your mind, what would you consider a vivid verb? Is it just enough that like where is that line for you? Those are the kinds of conversations that are really great to have with your kids because then they start being discerning. They start looking and saying, well, just because it's a verb doesn't automatically make it vivid. So in my mind, what would I consider a vivid verb? It's a fascinating and wonderful conversation to have with your kids. And it starts to reiterate the fact that they can have an opinion about writing. They are part of the conversation about writing, and they get to make choices. They get to have input into what it is that they are putting on the page, how they want to convey it. They're looking at the different ways that different writers use punctuation. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we use literature from all kinds of different here, let me stop screen sharing for a minute. This is why we use literature from so many different genres, so many different writers with different backgrounds, different types of writing, because we want them to start to get a fuller picture of what writing is. It is not just a curriculum that is, a workbook, these dry, boring sentences that don't have any oomph to them. There's no context, there's no interest there, there's no buy-in. So when we get to share these stories with our kids, we start to give them a fuller picture of what writing can be, what reading can be, the experience of it. And then when they start to move those skills over to their original writing, they realize that they have choices. They can bring their own voice to it. I mean, that passage, Chit Chat, has a voice. And Peter Brown was able to really lean in to Chit Chat's voice through the way that he conveyed her actions, the way he conveyed her breathlessness. And then also, he broke the fourth wall. He actually addressed the reader. What an epiphany. Like, oh my gosh, as a writer, I can address the reader. That's what's actually happening when we write. We're writing to an audience, but breaking the fourth wall makes that very explicit. And so it's really fun to have kids take a book where there's no fourth wall broken and then add in that extra commentary to break that wall down and to start playing with that concept. And that's the kind of thing that we do in our programs is we really get them to try these different techniques, try these different concepts and devices so that they have these things built up in their toolkit. And when they go to create their own writing, whether it is creative writing or academic writing, I was just telling a friend of mine who lives down the road. I actually met him on the trail today. He got his PhD from Harvard. This guy is just amazing. And we got to talking about my son, and my son had a Nietzsche class this last year in his university. And I remember he has a very distinct writing voice, and he's written a lot of fiction, but of course he's done his academic writing, and it's really interesting for me to see his voice come out even in his academic writing. And I was reading one of his papers. He just asked me, he's like, "Can you read this over before I submit it? I just want to, have you take a look." So he sent it to me over Google Docs, and I was giving some comments about it and asking questions. And he put a little bit of spicy humor in there. And I thought, oh, it's going to be really interesting to see how his professor reacts to this. I mean, here's this, academic paper on philosophy. And it was one of the comments that his professor actually made a remark on in a positive way. It was like he was actually relieved to see that there's still humor in the world. And like, let's bring some of that voice into even academic spaces. There's only so much, you got to have a feel for that, where you could push the limits on that. But I love the fact that my son he retains his writing voice even in academic writing. And I think it really stems from all of the years that he studied writing this way, and he was able to really come into his own and try different things on. It's like when little kids are tiny and they're doing these dress up clothes and they're pretending to be all these different characters. And we can do the same thing with writing, even with our teens. They can start to try on these different ways of writing, what feels good to them, to start to hone their voice and to have writing that actually feels like them. And so as a side remark here, it also makes them much more AI proof because they don't want to flatten their writing with AI. They want to express their thoughts and their ideas and their feelings in the way that they have honed and developed that feels like them, that is their ideas on the page that come to life. And when you read it, you know they're the one who has written that writing, and it is meaningful to them, and they want to share it, and they want to have people read it because they care about it. And that's what we want to express to our kids, is that writing, all of the writing that goes into all these books here, these writers, they care about it. They want to share these stories with you. They want to convey their thoughts and their ideas and bring these characters to life on the page for you. And they pour so much time and energy into it. And we get the benefit of that. And we get to show our kids that writing is so much more than just a workbook where you circle the nouns and you underline the verbs and you put periods at the end of sentences you don't care about. So this is why we love to get kids to have conversations, to engage with writing this way. And interestingly, we hear from people who are worried that, well, if I don't just have a workbook to give my kids, how do I know that they are actually learning these things? If we just have a bunch of conversations, then, that's like a lot of work for me. And then, how do I know that their skills are growing? So we feel like there are so many reasons why this goes beyond the kitchen table. We take it outside of just like a traditional school context where you're creating a whole language-rich life with your family. So there are so many opportunities to talk about writing that do not necessarily happen on the couch or at the kitchen table. Conversations that happen on the way to soccer practice, while you're doing dishes together, while you're weeding in the garden. The idea is that you bring yourself to the curriculum, you read it, you process it, you understand and get a sense of what is going to be covered in a passage. And then as you're reading, you get to that passage and you're reading and you say, "Whoa, wait a second here. Did you notice there are no commas in this passage?" When they were talking, Chit Chat was talking, absolutely no commas there. And then an ellipses. Wow, what do you think about that? That's a really interesting thing for a writer to do. And then you're having this natural conversation, and it is not a lesson. It doesn't feel like a lesson. But then you can go off and play with that. You can say, okay, let's take another passage and take all the commas out and read it and see what that's like. It becomes just a natural flow. And it means something because your child will remember, like somebody mentioned in the chat, chit chat has a whole way of being and the writing that goes into creating chit chat. So if somebody is breathless and a character that your child is writing has this breathless nature to them and you refer to chit chat, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about. We also have created planners and trackers. So we have a planner to help you plan if you're doing, the dart, arrow, boomerang, whatever level you're at. We have planners to help you plan. And then we have skills trackers. So as the year goes by, we go through and we spin and spiral around concepts. We revisit them again. We're looking at adjectives the way Peter Brown used them. We're looking at adjectives the way another writer used them. And we're coming back around again. And once your child starts to use those skills in their original writing, you start to see things pop up in their original writing, then you know that they have a certain degree of mastery and you can check that skill off on your skills tracker. So we have all those things in place for you to make it easier for you to feel like I'm having these natural conversations and we're engaged in these activities. We have try-its, we have spotlight activities, we have, ways to play with literary devices, so many opportunities for your kids to engage and have a felt experience of what the language is like and play with it. Not have them, apply in a way that is high stakes, but play with language, make it interesting, make it engaging. So we have all kinds of ways for you to do that in our products. Um, so I hope this was helpful and that you have a sense of the way we approach grammar and spelling and literary devices and punctuation. We have something, if you don't know, if you haven't seen it already, we have something called Poetry Tea Time. And so if you just type in Poetry Tea Time, you will find our website. We have so many ideas for how to engage in poetry with students, with kids. Kirsten put a link to it in the chat. It's a wonderful way to bring poetry into a regular environment, not make it this lofty thing that's scary that people can't approach. And when you pair that with tea or milk or juice and some sort of treat, kids absolutely love it and love to share. So definitely check that out. And we also have some of our programs have novels in verse. So there are lots of opportunities to engage in this type of learning and being with novels in verse like Otter, and you can make that easily into a whole unit study. We also have cultural context boxes. And for those of you who are in Brave Learner Home, we have these things called One Thing Challenges, which are unit studies where you can pair a book with a unit study and absolutely just fill out your whole month and do very family style learning. So those are all opportunities that we do for you. And if you purchase a year-long program, so like the Dart 1 or Dart 2, we make those connections for you, or we send you an email every month saying, this is the Dart for this month, and this is the one thing that you can access and use to enrich your learning with this book. If ELA is not your strong area, does Brave Writer have a lot of support for the educator? Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we are basically writing our programs to help you become the educator you want to be for your kids. So, we have a lot of parents who come to us and say, I have learned so much teaching my kids with your program. I have been, like they feel like they have a renaissance of their own education in terms of language arts and appreciation for language arts and writing. Okay, I'm going to look at a few questions in the question box. Can you do a class on, let's see, can you do a class on our still learning to read at 14 kiddos? How to make Brave Writer work for them? I tried jot it down, maybe the partnership, but waiting for the singles to come out as we have moved on to Arrow books and already read the darts. Um, yeah, we have, like I said, there are like in our training program really has a lot of supports. It's 4 months. You get access to Brave Learner Home. You get access to monthly webinars. I send Friday emails that are full of resources and support for you. And then we also have office hours. So we have a general office hour, which is an hour long meeting where you can come in, you can ask your questions, you can hear questions that other people are asking. And then we have, so that's for general. And then we have a high school office hours for people who are homeschooling teens and have very specific questions about teens and homeschooling teens in high school. So that's a really inexpensive way to get that extra support that you need. Or you can join Brave Learner Home, and there are so many people in Brave Learner Home who have also homeschooled teens all the way through and who have lots of resources and knowledge to share. Okay. If you have a child who doesn't want to talk about books, you can you can kind of, like I said, there are ways, there's a difference between posing a question and expecting an answer and approaching them with curiosity and kind of sharing your own insights. Sometimes um, kids in this one-on-one situation feel like they have to get a right answer. So our questions that we have what we call big juicy questions in the dart and arrow, and then in the boomerang and slingshot for teens, we have think piece questions. They are very open-ended. So there's not necessarily one right answer. And I think kids who have been expected to come up with answers and there's one right answer and they either know it or they don't tend to shut down a little bit. And when we can present them with open-ended questions where we aren't expecting something specific from them, it can take time. It can take a little time for them to trust that process that you aren't looking for something specific. And once you break through that enough times, then they can let their guard down a little bit. I will also suggest with teens that sometimes it's best to engage in that kind of book talk in a situation where you are side by side instead of straight on. So if you're doing the dishes together, if you're riding in the car together, if you're doing like my son and I would garden together and be out talking about things as we were in process. So then it becomes a natural thing where you can bring up something like, I was thinking about it and when Jeremy did that to Cabela, like I didn't think that he would actually do that. Like that seemed really out of character for him. And, I've just been thinking about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you are posing a question to him. You could actually just have a moment where you are wondering, where you are contemplating, sharing that I'm thinking about this book that we're reading. And that just opens the door for like his own contemplation or her own contemplation. And it might not be a reciprocal experience right then, but maybe later that night you're getting ready for bed. This has always happened to me. I'm getting ready for bed. I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock. My teen is like just ramping up and ready to have this huge conversation about the book we're reading or whatever it might be. So I would have to be like, okay, I'm gonna sit down. We're gonna have book talk until 10 o'clock. It's always bedtime. It's always bedtime. So be open to not being received right away. Be open to trying for those more open-ended questions. And this goes for younger kids too. Keep the questions. You're not doing comprehension questions. Teachers sometimes have to do comprehension questions because they're dealing with, 20, 30 kids. And it's hard to have those more in-depth conversations, but you're a homeschooler. You have the opportunity, when you're having these conversations with your kids, whether or not they comprehend what's happening. They are just conversations. And you could even, sometimes I would say, we would sit down again to read together and I'd say, can somebody get me up to speed? I can't remember what happened, last when we left off yesterday or the day before when we were reading. And your kids will like naturally narrate back to you, oh, yeah, this is where we're at. So you can give those natural opportunities for conversation, and then it really lowers the bar and it doesn't make them feel so on the spot, like there has to be a right answer. Okay, the next one. What would be the best point of view for writing a story? It's totally up to you. It's up to the author. There is no best point of view depending on what kind of story you want to tell. So sometimes I have heard of writers completely switching perspectives. I have heard of writers telling a story completely first person through one perspective, changing that to like a close third from following a completely different character. So I've heard actually Jasmine Warga. Um, I think it was. Oh no, it was Other Words for Home. She wrote Other Words for Home as a prose book, and then like 2 weeks before her manuscript was due, she changed it completely to poetry and did a poetry in verse. So that's not point of view or perspective, but it's just there are different ways to share stories. And sometimes that first person perspective is great. Sometimes that close third, sometimes a more, omniscient narrator works. It really depends on the story you want to tell and who you're telling it to. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, I'm a public school teacher, and you are correct about having one-on-one conversations. Yeah, I taught public school for high school for years, and it is really tough to carve out that time for those conversations. It's so valuable, and if you can do it, definitely try. But it's as homeschoolers, we get to operate in a much different way. So taking a curriculum that can be used in a classroom environment and adapting that to home means, we have different ways that we can do it. And so having a curriculum that is possible to do with your students and even in a family situation. One thing about Brave Writer is that we definitely try to encourage you to like pull your kids in. If you have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, as much as you can, do things together with them where you have like a family read aloud, and then maybe your 10 and 12-year-old are doing the same copy work and they're doing work in the same book. Your 14-year-old might be kind of listening along with the family read aloud and then have their own, boomerang level book for teens that they're reading, and you're reading alongside them to have conversations. There's so many different ways to do it and to pull these resources together to work for your family. And we do have teachers that use our products and adapt them for classroom environments. It's just it takes a little bit of time and energy to put in that. There's really isn't enough time of the day. Yeah, when you have 5, 6 classes of 20 plus 30. I mean, I remember having more than that in some of my high school classes. So, yeah, it's really important that we can lean in to the ability to create that one-on-one time and to have those conversations and interactions with our kids. Can you speak to helping young children, 8, 9, interested in writing more and decrease writing fatigue after writing a few sentences? It's just a matter of just building their stamina. So with copy work, something like copy work, you can just oftentimes we will say, ask the child what they can do. Ask the child, like, how much can you write today? And then see where they're at. And over time, they will start adding more on. We also, in our Quill program, you have 8 to 9-year-old, But in our quill program, which is for 5 to 7-year-olds, we do a lot of activities to increase their gross or fine motor skills. So you might look at some ideas for increasing fine motor skills and hand strength because um, if our kids are spending a lot of time on devices where they are using keyboards and things like that, it's possible for their hand strength to decrease. And their fine motor skills are just developing differently. So they're still developing some fine motor skills, but it's just different. Um, Short bursts of writing. Yeah. So we really lean into that idea that it's short and then they can come back to it and they can keep revisiting that. And I think that you'll see over time their skills and their stamina will increase. All right. Can you adapt the lessons to bilingual classrooms? I certainly think so. We've had lots of parents come and talk to us about how they have adapted to bilingual classrooms, or if their kids are, English is second language. There are lots of ways that you can do that, and translations, doing your own translation work there. But the practices of copywork and dictation have been around for many, many years. And so they are tried and true practices. And I went out to do a Gaelic workshop here in Nova Scotia. There's a Gaelic college, and I was doing copywork in Gaelic. So there are lots of ways to adapt these practices to what your kids are learning and doing. And our dictation practices, they're straight dictation, which is somebody reads a passage and the child writes it down, including all the punctuation and capitalization of proper nouns, beginning of sentences, and everything. There's French style dictation, which means that you take a passage and you take a few select words and just put blanks there. And then when you're reading it, the child fills in the blank words. It's kind of like Mad Libs. Um, and then there's reverse dictation, which is where you take a passage and you take all the punctuation and capitalization and you remove that. And then they go in and they are the editors. They correct every error. You can misspell some words. They go in and they are the editor that corrects all the mistakes. And so you get a chance to see, like they don't have to find them all, but when they do find them, you get to check for mastery. Are they catching these things and putting punctuation where it needs to be? Are they capitalizing words, proper nouns, words at the beginning of sentences? So you can start to get a sense of what they're catching and what they're not. And then the things that they don't catch, you can target later on for other lessons. So those are major practices. If you purchase a mechanics and literature program, like the dart, arrow, boomerang, or slingshot, you get guidelines. And that guidelines PDF is absolutely golden because it shares all of our practices and all of the things that you need to know to implement the program. And then in the dart for 8 to 10-year-olds, we actually create the French style dictation and reverse dictation passages for you with the passages that we select to study from the book. So there's 4 weeks. We select one passage per week to study, and then we provide you with those. So that's kind of a bit more hand-holding to walk you through when you're first starting on the dart level with 8 to 10-year-olds. And then for the upper levels, we just teach you how to do it to target the skills that your tween or teen is working on. Which program or bundle would you recommend for intervention reading and writing tutors? You might want, I think it depends on the age that you're working with. Simply go to our stages pages and click on, you'll see there's buttons for each age group. So if you start with the age group, even if you have like older students who are looking for that intervention, um, you can adapt the programs for them. So what you're looking at is trying to look at the book lists that will engage your students. So if you have 12-year-olds and they are going to be bored and not interested in reading the Dart books, then don't start with the Dart. Just start with the Arrow, and we give you all sorts of supports on how to adapt copywork, dictation, and all the lessons to help those kids who need those interventions. So if you start there, you'll be in good shape. And if you have questions, just write to us. Just write at help@bravereader.com and we will help you. Okay, everyone, I really appreciate you coming. I hope this was helpful. And just write to us if you have any other questions, and we will be happy to help. All right. Thanks, everyone.